So students can use these three resources, and this question we basically identify this as a simple question. So like you told before, like if it's straight out of the text and students should just read the question and then know the answer, that means it's a simple question. So this question falls into the category of simple questions. So this answer can basically be found in the recommended text and e-learning material on the LMS. And also I'd like to add that each question basically addresses a particular learning outcome. So we have stressed on these learning outcomes in previous programs, why they are important, because we are going to assess in the assignments as well as the final examinations whether the students have achieved these learning outcomes, because this is the only thing we can assess. So this question basically, the corresponding learning outcome of this question is identify the interfaces and describe their key parameters. So if we talk about the USB interface here, we talk about the parameter of data transfer rate of the interface. So it's directly related to a particular learning outcome.
So what would be the answer in that case for this particular question?
Yes, so the answer is given are 480 megabytes per second, 12 megabytes per second, 12 megabits per second, 480 megabits per second, and 1.5 megabytes per second. So all these answers, if students look carefully, it's an answer of, because the 1.1 is about 1.5 megabytes per second, when the USB 2 interface is basically 40 times faster. So students should be able to relate between that, and then they should come up with the answer of 60 megabytes per second. But since that answer is not here, if they multiply it by 8 to make it bits, then we get the answer 480 megabits per second. So it's answer D.
So another important thing is you should be familiar with these notations to identify the capital simple letters, difference, which means bits, bytes, which are completely different. So while studying, you need to understand with respect to the meaning, otherwise you will get confused whether it's A or B, A or D or whatever. So shall we go to another question, question 2, which is the following advantage. Which are the following advantages of the USB interface over Firewire interface? So there's some statements given. So again, for this sort of thing, you will have to read each and every one and interpret whether it's an advantage or not. Whereas the previous one, if you know a value, you can eliminate quickly. So which means it becomes much more harder than the previous type of a question.
We've actually categorized this particular question as a moderate or a hard question, because we expect students to know the content as well as compare, because comparing is a very high level skill that students should have, because they should be able to take a certain two things and they should be able to compare the differences between them. So we consider this as a particularly hard question, and this question basically covers the same topic as the previous one, expansion cards and system interfaces. So like they might wonder why we are having two questions from the same topic. Well, it's important that students take note that even in the final examination, we have in the syllabus stressed a certain number of learning hours per particular topic. So the number of questions from a particular topic is also relative to that. So if we have, let's say, 60 questions in the final paper, then each section with the 10-hour time period would have 10 questions based on it. So it is important that students put ample time and the relative amount of time into studying each of these.
So even within a particular topic, there is so much of information, and even the two questions, all this from the same topic, test two different areas. And so here the important thing is you study about the USB interface and the Firewire interface independently, but then you don't just study as it is. You should be able to later on compare and see which have pluses and minuses when you compare. So so that sort of thing is what is tested with respect to this particular question. So so shall we see how to proceed in solving this particular
Yes.
question?
So here we have talked about the USB interface in general, not USB 1.1 or USB 2. We have talked about it in general, and here the first answer is USB has faster data transfer than FireWire. So students cannot get an idea because we have talked about USB interface in general and the FireWire interface. So students should know that FireWire in some cases has faster data transfer rates than the USB interface. So then this answer can be eliminated as an incorrect answer. Then we have the second answer, USB preserves system resources but not FireWire. So here this is a key issue with USB, that USB preserves a lot of system resources, because students would know by now that 127 devices can be connected to the same USB interface and it will only use one IRQ. So that is very important, but the FireWire does not do that. So here in this answer B is a correct answer. And here, unlike FireWire, audio visual devices can be connected to the USB interface. So in this also, FireWire, you usually connect video devices and audio devices through the FireWire interface as well. So this is also incorrect answer. And unlike FireWire, storage devices can be connected to the USB. Now it is true that we can plug in storage devices to the USB, but we can also plug in storage devices like external hard drives and external CD-ROMs to the FireWire interface. So this is also an incorrect option, and USB is a standard but FireWire is not. But if we take this answer, USB is a standard and FireWire is also a standard, so that is also an incorrect answer.
So we saw you have to eliminate each and every one, and also if you certain cases it was true for some and not for all. So in that case, when you are selecting, it should be for all cases, it should satisfy. So you should have a thorough knowledge, so otherwise you can't compare and contrast differences between these interfaces. So you should keep this in mind, because once you select an incorrect option, then automatically you are losing marks as well. So you need to be careful when you are answering a hard question. Think twice before you eliminate or select